Mr. President.
The Senator from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the recognition. And are we in a quorum call?
No, we're not.
No, we aren't. Okay. Thank you very much. I wanted to start. I know a lot of people look at us speaking on the floor and think, well, you know, why aren't they wearing masks? Well, and I saw Senator Schumer. He put on his mask after he finished his talk and left. And I have my mask here. I just took it off. I'm going to put it on after I finish speaking. And you know the way this works, I wear this mask to protect you. You wear a mask to protect me. And that's the way we protect each other in this pandemic. And I don't think there's any doubt that wearing a mask saves lives. And that's how we're going to overcome in this pandemic. So I see people around New Mexico all the time when I'm back home wearing masks and really taking this pandemic seriously and taking our governor's orders seriously. Now, Mr. President, reauthorization of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, is now before us. And we have an opportunity to reform this statute to protect both our constitutional rights and our security. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, Congress hurriedly passed the Patriot Act and authorized extraordinarily broad authority to the executive and the executive branch that threatened America's and Americans' privacy rights and liberty interests. In October 2001, I was one of 66 members in the House of Representatives who voted against the Patriot Act. It was not an easy vote, but in the years since, it's clear that it was the correct vote, because the Patriot Act ultimately allowed the government to invade the privacy of millions of innocent Americans. Exhibit 1, Section 215 of the Act. Section 215 has been greatly abused, resulting in the bulk collection of hundreds of millions of Americans' phone records and email contact lists. The nation was shocked when we found out about this bulk collection in 2013. In 2015, we passed the Freedom Act to cure some of the abuses, but it did not cure them all. Section 215 and 2 other provisions of the Patriot Act are up for reauthorization. That is the bill before us. Congress has the opportunity to protect our civil liberties, even as we protect national security. And while the House bill made improvements, it is still flawed. The House version still allows large-scale collection of American sensitive information, and it doesn't reform the FISA courts to prevent abuses. We should learn the lesson of October 2001 and not rush this through the Senate. We should include amendments to better protect Americans' civil liberties. I support the Wyden-Daines Amendment that prohibits collection of Americans' internet website browsing and internet search history information without a search warrant. It is a missed opportunity for the nation that the amendment failed yesterday, although by one vote. Right now, the federal government can digitally track articles Americans are reading online, social media they're using, where they're shopping, which restaurants they're thinking about going to. The list goes on and on. Just imagine thinking about everything you do on the internet and your devices. That is open game. The Fourth Amendment protects us against unreasonable searches. In this day and age, when so much of our life is conducted over the internet, Americans must have assurance that their web browsing, which can reveal highly sensitive information, will not be unreasonably intruded upon by federal authorities without a search warrant and without probable cause. This information provides an intimate window into our lives. It can reveal a person's medical conditions, political and religious views, and far more. We need to make clear the government must demonstrate probable cause to collect this type of personal information. Second, we need to strengthen the oversight of FISA courts. We know these secret courts are subject to abuse. In 2015, Congress authorized FISA courts to appoint amici, friends of the court, in cases involving novel or significant interpretation of the law. This was a positive step forward to provide independent oversight. But it appears there have been only 16 cases in which amici have actually been appointed. Yet there have been more cases than 16 in which novel issues were raised, and many more cases where an independent voice is needed to defend civil rights in FISA court proceedings. The recent Department of Justice Inspector General report examining 25 FISA applications underscores this need. The IG found errors and inadequately supported facts in every application. An expanded amicus role is necessary to bring greater accountability to the application process. So I voted in support of the Lee-Leahy amendment that expands amici participation to significant First Amendment activities, to matters where a religious or political organization, a public official or candidate, or the news media is involved, and to matters approving new technology or reauthorizing programmatic surveillance. Third, we must make sure FISA applications are completely accurate and all exculpatory evidence is disclosed. Accuracy and transparency are critical to maintaining integrity within our justice system. The Lee-Leahy amendment strengthens the requirements for accuracy and disclosure of all information, including exculpatory information in FISA applications. I'm pleased this body stood in support of strengthening safeguards in the FISA court process. However, our failure to protect Americans from the federal government looking over their shoulders while they're on the internet and collecting personal information is unacceptable. National security does not require the federal government intruding upon the private lives of Americans without probable cause and a search warrant. Mr. President, our liberties and freedoms define us as a nation. Either we should reconsider the Wyden-Daines Amendment, a motion to reconsider is allowed at this point, or we should vote no on FISA reauthorization. We don't need to sacrifice our liberties and freedoms for an illusion of security. You know, one of our founders way back in this country, Ben Franklin, said it a little bit differently. He said, "Those who would give up liberty in the name of security deserve neither," end quote. Now, Mr. President, before I yield the floor today, I'd like to commemorate one of New Mexico's great heroes, Senator Dennis Chavez, who 70 years ago this week, on May 12, 1950, stood on this floor of the United States Senate and was the first in the Senate to sound the alarm against Senator Joseph McCarthy, who had begun his reign of terror that year. Dennis Chavez was born into a farming family in territorial New Mexico. He had a 7th grade education and rose to become a Georgetown University Law School graduate, the first American-born Hispanic U.S. Senator, and at 27 years, the longest-serving Hispanic senator in the history of our country. Senator Chavez, or El Senador, as we call him in Nuevo Mexico, was a man of great integrity. In February 1950, McCarthy had charged, without proof, that there were 205 card-carrying communists working in the State Department. By March, he accused American scholar Owen Lattimore, among others, of being a communist. That accusation, also without evidence, spurred Senator Chavez to take to the Senate floor, to come down here and to speak out. He told the Senate, quote, "I would like to be remembered as the man who raised a voice. I devoutly hope not a voice in the wilderness at a time in history of this body when we seem bent upon placing limitations on the freedom of the individual. I would consider all of the legislation which I have supported meaningless if I were to sit idly by, silent, during a period which may go down in history as an era where we are permitted curtailments of our liberties, a period when we quietly shackled the growth of men's minds." End quote. Dennis Chavez. The fact is, Mr. President, we're seeing chilling similarities between the Joseph McCarthy of 7 decades ago and the situation we are in today. Mr. President, I have extended remarks for the record on Senator Chavez. I would ask consent to put those extended remarks in.
Without objection.
And I'll finish with one passage from 70 years ago. Senator Chavez said, quote, "It matters little if the Congress appropriates hundreds of millions of dollars to check the erosion of the soil if we permit the erosion of our civil liberties, free institutions, and untrammeled pursuit of truth." End quote. That's our own senator in New Mexico, Senator Dennis Chavez. Those words, Mr. President, resonate as much today as they did then. And I see my good friend, Senator Paul's here on the floor, so I believe he's the next in line. I would yield to Senator Paul. Thank you, and I yield the floor.